Join me on the broadcast, my colleague Shawan Sen. Shawan, we have just seen President Erdogan meeting with the Russian and Ukrainian delegates at the 6th round of talks in Istanbul. Key talks being held today in Istanbul. What are we looking at today?
Well, Crispino, before I get into what you're essentially asking, I'll first tell our viewers where we are broadcasting, because that's far more important in terms of what's really happening on the ground. We are perhaps the first Indian network to reach the port city of Odessa, and I'll just ask my camera person to just show you. This is rather a very important strategic military as well as economic importance to Ukraine, because this is the economic corridor. This is the very place where now the battle lies about seizing the port city of Odessa. We've already seen what's really happened about just 150 miles from this very place, which has now been taken by the Russians. Remember, this is going to become the very important, the crucial place, because this entire city has now been completely fortified. What I'm showing you right now, I'll ask our camera person to stay with the visuals. This is the port city, the strategic port city of Odessa, and from the time the invasion actually began, there were multiple inputs suggesting that in the mind of the Russians, this is the very city. Not to forget that this is the naval headquarters of Ukraine. After they've lost Sevastopol in Crimea, this is the very place that they shifted their base to. And right now, if at all the attempt that is basically made by the Russians, that is to basically encircle this area and take and capture this city, remember, Ukraine will be cut off from the Black Sea. Remember, this very place becomes very, very important for the economic activity of this country, because the entire movement or their imports as well, exports, actually happens from this very port cities. Of the 3 port cities, remember, they've already lost one, Kherson being one of the places which was the first city to have been captured by the Russians. Right now, the fear still looms large, Crispino. Right from the time the invasion began, there was all preparations that were essentially made by the Ukrainians to try and protect this city. In fact, we reached around 8 o'clock this morning, and every nook and corner of the city of Odessa has been completely fortified. There is absolutely not a single person that you would actually find in the streets. It was actually very difficult, Crispino, for us to also reach this very place, because outside the territorial waters of Ukraine is where the Russian naval ships are docked. Most of the attacks, the missile attacks that are actually taking place right now is from the Black Sea itself. So you have had the caliber missiles that were launched by the Russians. It was from outside the territorial waters of Ukraine. Not very far from here is where the naval ships of the Russians are. Right now, for us, it becomes very important to report from this location, because as per the inputs that have been gathered so far, is that the Russians have been eyeing this city for a very long time. So if they are in a position to actually gather, or they capture a city called Mykolaiv, which is about 45 miles north of Odessa, if they are able to capture that city, then it means that they are moving towards Odessa. It would be this very city that the Russians would be trying to capture, and that is the reason why the Ukrainians are trying their level best to protect it from all sides. They have ensured that this city does not get encircled. While we were coming, we were told that there was up north is the place where bombardments have actually taken place in Odessa. Remember, this city over the last few days has been quite silent, but it does look like this is the lull before the storm, because at the end of the day, if the Russians have already indicated, if you remember the speech that was made by Vladimir Putin, he basically referred to what really happened back in 2014 when there was an uprising here in the city of Odessa. About 40 pro-Russian activists were killed in that uprising, and in fact Vladimir Putin made a mention of that, saying that Russia exactly knows the name of those people who were involved in it, and they will punish each one of them. That was the message, indicating that somewhere on their radar, this city still remains on the radar. I'll ask my camera person to remain with these visuals. These are visuals of the port city. This is a strategic port city of Ukraine. And on the first very day when the invasion began, remember, this was the very place that was attacked, and that is the reason why right from day one we are given to understand there were attempts that were essentially made. There were attempts that were essentially made by the Ukrainians to do everything that is required to try and protect this very place. And why is it that the Russians are also eyeing this place? Let's not forget, this is basically part of the Russian Empire, the Imperial Russian Empire, and that is the reason why perhaps you're looking at the Russians trying to, they still have their eyes on this very city. If they are able to capture it, remember, it's going to be one of the biggest strategic win for Russia, and that is something that the Ukrainians are aware of, and that's the reason why they have perhaps ensured that whatever it is required to try and protect the city. In fact, remember, just about a few days ago, President Zelensky took the step of removing a civilian mayor of Odessa and bringing in someone from the army. So currently a colonel rank officer is also being made the mayor of Odessa, simply because of one reason, because they do realize that they cannot afford to lose this city. That's the reason why there's a heavy, intense battle that is going on in places which are closer to Odessa. For instance, Melitopol, Kherson, as well as Mykolaiv. Mykolaiv is the very place which there was a huge fear that there is a possibility that if the Russians are able to capture Mykolaiv, they would essentially come to this very place. Mariupol was the other very place, remember, where there has been intense gun battle that has taken place. In fact, the latest reports also suggesting that there is a possibility that there's a slim possibility that the Ukrainians may lose the battle in Mariupol. And if that happens, it is certainly bad news for all those who are defending right now this very place where we are broadcasting from. So that's the reason why I'm saying, Crispino, this becomes a very, very important place for the Ukrainians. We'll stay with these visuals because these visuals are very important. In a short while from now, we'll also be heading towards the city center of Odessa, because that's where you would actually get a glimpse of the preparations that are basically underway right now. And Ukrainians are trying their level best to ensure that not a single inch is ceded to the Russians as far as Odessa is concerned. There is a history when it comes to a strategic port city like Odessa, because there is a large percentage of pro-Russians residing in this very place. But having said that, since the time the invasion actually began, there is that entire sentiment of trying to unite the Ukrainians, and that is the reason why they have to a great extent been able to protect the city, and they've been able to ensure that the Russians do not enter the city. So far, there have been sporadic incidents of rocket hits, at least in some of the villages up north of Odessa, but there hasn't been the kind of aerial bombardment that we have seen in other places as much as you've actually seen in this in Odessa itself. So it's important to point out here is that over the days to come, there is still this fear that if the Russians are able to move or advance towards Mykolaiv, cross Mykolaiv, then there is a clear indication that the Russians are planning to come to this very strategic port city. Let's not forget why this becomes this entire place. Black Sea and the Sea of Azov becomes the most important, most crucial part of this entire operation that the Russians are carrying out. And look at the focus right now the Russians have. They are not looking at the capital city of Kiev, Sumy, or for that matter even Kharkiv, because remember, those are the secondary tasks, if I can quote a Russian general. What they are focusing is on the eastern side, the possibility of a breakaway faction, possibility of breaking Ukraine at this point in time as far as the eastern side is concerned. But if that actually happens, remember, Odessa will also be one of the bigger targets at this point in time, because that's where, if you really look at it, the focus is going to be right now. The focus is to try and capture this very city, along with Kherson, which has already been taken. Sea of Azov is the island body which they would like to have their own presence. And take a look at what has happened back in 2014. They have been able to capture Crimea, the Crimean Peninsula, which is the most strategic place in this very area. That is now under the, that has been captured by the Russians. So if Odessa is also in their control, perhaps they are in a they are in a position to control an entire economic corridor. They're able to cut off the Ukrainians from the Black Sea, which is going to be a major body blow to the Ukrainians. And that is exactly what the Ukrainians realize at this point in time. And they say today, this is a fight for survival. They are doing everything that is required to survive, and they're doing everything to protect strategic cities like this. And let's be very honest, they have been able to. Let's just stay with these visuals. As you can see, I'll try and describe what we are seeing. There is a limitation beyond which we cannot actually show you, because this is a strategic point. And this port city also has multiple landing sites as far as the Ukrainian Navy is concerned. And if you look at just beyond the Ukrainian territorial water, that's where the Russian naval ships are basically, they are all lined up in that very area. I'll ask Ravaji to stay with the visuals as much as he can while I just take you all through all the details, because remember, this is a city this is going to be the real prize for the Russians, because just to give you a little bit of history, this was founded by the Catherine the Great in the late 1700s, and this city is known as the crown jewel of the Russian Empire and it's extremely critical commercial port of the Soviet Union. However, having said that, may not be as militarily significant as the Crimean Peninsula, which Russia had annexed in 2014. But President Vladimir Putin has spoken wistfully and about the reconstitution of the imperial era of New Russia, a region along the Black Sea centered on Odessa. So that is the reason why, Crispino, as I have been pointing out, this is an all-important location, and things would be very, very different if they are in a position to capture this very city. That's the reason why, while we were coming, we have already covered about 800 kilometers. We started from Lviv. We were coming all the way, crossing places like Ternopil. We have crossed a place called Vinnytsia, Melensky, and finally we have reached this morning around 8 o'clock. It's almost about 12-hour journey that we had to undertake to come to this city of Odessa. And while we were coming, let me just tell you, Crispino, what we were seeing, that almost every place you would find these hedgehogs that were basically placed on the road, that is to prevent the movement of any tank in those areas. And in the city center, I can tell you, not even an inch, I would say, not even an inch that you can actually move in without the blockades that have been put by the Ukrainians. All of this is to just try and protect this very place. What you see right now, this is the docking center. This is the docking part of the ships. Some of it are private landing or the dockyards that you basically see. If you take a look straight down, is perhaps you would also find some of the naval ships, which we'll try and avoid filming it, because we've been told not to film any of their naval assets. But all that I can tell you is that this becomes a very important, crucial place, because that's from here. Over the last few days, there have been multiple missile launches that have taken place. These are cruise missiles that have basically been launched by the Russians, and Russians who haven't been able to carry on with the ground offensive, they are basically carrying out these missile attacks from the territorial waters beyond what you can see right now. It's beyond the territorial waters of Ukraine is where the Russians are basically carrying out large part of their offensive. Large part of the missiles that have been launched towards the northern side of Ukraine has been from the Black Sea itself. So for the Russians right now, this is becoming a very, very important, very crucial, if I may say so, an important area from where they're now carrying out their aerial assaults also. And remember, all in all, while not much has happened right now in the last 24 to 48 hours in the city of Odessa, but there is this sheer fear that they have that the Russians are basically coming very close. They are trying to avoid a situation when Odessa is completely encircled by the Russian troops. If that is only because if that actually happens, if the Russians are in a position to encircle this area, that would essentially mean that the entire area would now be cut off, would be completely cut off off from the economic activity that is still being carried out. I'll ask our video journalist to stay on, to keep staying with these images as I take you through some more details of why exactly this is becoming very important, because the latest inputs are also suggesting that from this very place, the Russian forces are also trying to open a land corridor to the breakaway region of Transnistria. Now, that's which has basically sought independence from Moldova since the 1990s. And this region that you're looking at, it hosts about around 1,500 Russian troops deployed as part of the peacekeeping force that was created following a 1992 ceasefire agreement. So that's the reason why, as I've been emphasizing, this is becoming the most crucial area or the crucial part of this entire war. On the one hand, you're looking at some of the cities being constantly bombarded by the Russians, but having said that, there is enough indication right now, Crispino, that there is a possibility that in the days to come, the war is going to shift to this very city from where Republic Media Network is reporting at this point in time. This is, as I've been emphasizing, part of the, not very far from here is the Crimean Peninsula, which is now under the control of the Russians. Russians, obviously, as they continue with their entire attempt to take away more cities, they also somewhere down the line have in their mind to try and capture the port city of Odessa, which I would say is the peninsula of multiple opportunities for the Ukrainians. And that's the reason why